Last 72 hours, we are beginning to hear some promises, perhaps being downplayed, to possibilities.
Can we now agree that there isn't actually an extra 350 million quid a week to spend on other public services?
There's about a net 10 billion, as you know well, having spoken during that campaign.
Which is more like 160 million.
There's about 10 billion a year, but of course that is only available once we've actually left the European Union, which will be 2019. Sure. And those decisions have to be taken by the government of the day. And that will be a very different government of the day, even from we have now. So It's a long time in the future. But what the Leave campaign, and what I think people didn't quite grasp in the referendum was, it wasn't a general election. They weren't electing a new programme. What they were electing to do was to give future governments greater choice over the actions they could pursue if they wanted.
So I'll log that the 350 is actually now more like 160 million.
My issue with the EU has always been the lack of sovereignty, the lack of democracy. Of course there are economic issues as well. It wouldn't be exactly Norway, obviously. We're a very different country. We're 65 million rather than 5 million. But the idea of staying within a common market but outside the political integration, I think that is feasible, yes.
And that means free movement of people.
It means free movement of labour. It doesn't mean EU citizenship with all the acquired rights.
I'm sorry, we've just been through 3 months of agony on the issue of immigration, and the public have been led to believe that what they have voted for is an end to free movement.
Here is a very, very important point. From the moment we joined, we had the right to take up a job offer in another member state. You had a legal entitlement if you presented your contract. Now, that changed with Maastricht. When EU citizenship was introduced, people were given legal entitlements to live in other countries, to vote in other countries, and to claim welfare and have the same university tuition and so on. That bit, I think, is going to change. That means that we can deport people.
Why didn't you say this in the campaign?
Listen,
why did you not say in the campaign that you were wanting a system, a scheme where we had free movement of labour? Come on, that is completely at odds with what the public think they have just voted for.
Is the £350 million that we were told going to go to the NHS, is that going to go to the NHS and when?
Well, the £350 million was an extrapolation of the 19.1 billion. That's the total amount of money that last year we gave across to the European Union. We can talk about money's back and everything else.
Your side said it was all going to go to the NHS.
Well, actually, what we actually said was a significant amount of it will go to the NHS, and that is essentially down to the government, but I actually believe that is what was pledged, and that's what should happen. So
that £350 million will go to the NHS?
That money will go, well, there was talk about it going to the NHS, but there are also other bits and pieces like agriculture and stuff, which is part of that process. So that is the divide up. It was never total, but it is a commitment, and it's a commitment that should be stand by.
Let's give our NHS the £350 million the EU takes every week. That's pretty explicit. No ifs, no buts. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and that's down to the government as to what proportion they want to do of that completely themselves. But the point that everybody should bear in mind is that money which goes to the European Union that comes back, that money now is able to be spent on a priority like the NHS, but others that where there are already commitments
but it won't be £350 million. That is a promise broken.
Well, it's not a promise broken. I never said that during the course of the election. What I said was we would be able to spend the lion's share. But the lion's share of that money, now the government is now able to spend. So people can say that there's more money available now for the NHS, categorically more, which is what's required, and that's the key point.
£350 million a week we send to the EU, which we will no longer send to the EU. Can you guarantee that's going to go to the NHS?
No, I can't, and I would never have made that claim. That was one of the mistakes I think that the Leave campaign made. Hang
on a moment, that was one of your adverts.
Well, it wasn't one of my adverts, I can assure you.
Well, that was one of the Leave campaign's adverts, that money was going to go to the NHS. And
I think they made a mistake.
That's why many people have voted.
They made a mistake in doing that. But what I can tell you is we have a nice featherbed.
After 17 million people have voted for Leave, based, I don't know how many people voted on the basis of that advert, but that was a huge part of the propaganda. You're now saying that's a mistake?
We have a £10 billion a year, a £34 million a day featherbed that is going to be free money that we can spend on the NHS, on schools, or whatever it is.
But you're not guaranteeing that that money, as promised, will go to the NHS?
You must understand, I was ostracised by the official Leave campaign and as I've always done, did my own thing.
Do you think there are